Hi guys, we're going to read another couple chapters of Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach. I'm going to read today, which is Monday, and then I'll read it again on Thursday this week. I'm only going to do 2 days this week. I think we'll finish up next week. So we'll do 2 days this week because it's technically our spring break, and then we'll finish up the book next week. So we're going to read James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. We're going to start on chapter 27. James Henry Trotter and his companions crouched close together at the top of the peach as the night began closing in around them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. Gradually it grew darker and darker, and then the pale three-quarter moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light over the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and hundreds of silky white strings going upward from the stem were beautiful in the moonlight. So also was the great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was not in the least like traveling in an airplane. The airplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there in the great cloud mountain goes farther for cover as it approaches. That is why people who travel in airplanes never see anything. But on the peach, ah yes, the peach was soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along, and several times during that long, silent night ride high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Once, as they drifted silently past a massive white cloud, they saw on top of it a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things that were about twice the height of an ordinary man. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as wide as the cloud itself, but as the peach sailed closer, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures, tall, wispy, wraith-like, shadowy white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss and thin white hairs. "Ooh," said the ladybug, "I don't like this at all." "Shh," James whispered back. "Don't let them hear you. They must be cloud men." "Cloud men," they murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. "Oh dear, oh dear." "I'm glad I'm blind and I can't see them," the earthworm said, "or I would probably scream." "I hope they don't turn around and see us," Miss Spider stammered. "Do you think that they would eat us?" the earthworm asked. "Well, they could eat you," the centipede answered, grinning. "They would cut you up like a little salami and eat you in thin slices." The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. "But what are they doing?" the old green grasshopper whispered. "I don't know," James answered softly. "Let's watch and see." The cloud men were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First, they would reach out, all of them at once, and grab handfuls of the cloud, and then they would roll these handfuls of cloud in their fingers until they turned into what looked like a large white marble. And then they would toss the marbles to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start over again. It was all very silent and mysterious. The pile of marbles beside them was growing larger and larger, and soon there was a truckload of them at least. "They must be absolutely mad," the centipede said. "There is nothing to be afraid of here." "Be quiet, you pest," the earthworm whispered, "or we shall all be eaten if they see us." But the cloudmen were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed a great peach floating silently up behind them. Then the watchers in the peach saw one of the cloudmen raise his long, wispy arms above his head, and they heard him shouting, "All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels." And all the other cloudmen immediately let out a strange, high-pitched whoop of joy and started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air, and then they picked up the enormous shovels, and they rushed over to the piles of marbles, and they began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud into the space. "Down they go," they chanted as they worked. "Down they go, hail and snow, freezes and sneezes and noses will blow." "It's hailstones," whispered James excitedly. "They've been making hailstones, and now they are showering down onto the people in the world below." "Hailstones?" said the centipede. "That's ridiculous. This is summertime. You don't have hailstones in the summertime." "They are practicing for winter," James told him. "I don't believe it," shouted the centipede, raising his voice. "Shh," the others whispered, and James said softly, "For heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise." The centipede roared with laughter. "Those imbeciles couldn't hear anything," he cried. "They're deaf as doorknobs. You watch." And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet to his mouth, and he was yelling at the cloudmen loud as he could. "Idiots," he yelled, "nincompoops, half-wits, blunderheads. What on earth do you think you're doing over there?" The effect was immediate. The cloud men jumped around as if they had been stung by wasps, and when they saw that great golden peach floating past them, not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise, and they dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood with the moonlight streaming all around them, absolutely motionless, like a group of tall, white, hairy statues staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went sailing by. Here's a picture of that I want to show you. See, here are the cloud men, and there's the peach above it. The passengers on the peach, all except centipedes, sat frozen in terror, looking back at the cloud men and wondering what was going to happen next. Now you've done it, you loathsome pest, whispered the earthworm to the centipede. I'm not afraid of them, shouted the centipede, and to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up on his full height and he started dancing around, making insulting signs at the cloud men with all 42 of his legs. This evidently infuriated the cloud men beyond belief. All at once they spun around and they grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and they rushed at the edge of the cloud and they started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury the whole time. Look out, cried James. Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck. It was lucky they did. A large hailstone can hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it is thrown hard enough. And my goodness, how those cloud men could throw. The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a machine gun, and James could hear them smashing the sides of the peach and burying themselves in the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises. Plop, 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 and then ping, 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 as if they pounced off the poor ladybug's shell because she couldn't lie flat as the others, and then... Eek. Crack! As one of them hit Centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. Ow, he cried. Ow, stop, stop, stop! But the cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about the cloud like a huge hairy ghost, picking up hailstones from the pile and dashing to the edge of the cloud and hurling them at the peach, dashing back to get more, and then, while the pile of stones was all gone, they simply grabbed handfuls of cloud and made as many more as they wanted, much bigger ones now. Some of them were as big as cannonballs. Quickly, cried James, down in the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out. There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later everyone was safely inside, downstairs inside of the stone of the peach, trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. I'm a wreck, groaned the centipede. I'm wounded all over. Well, it serves you right, said this earthworm. Would somebody kindly look and see if my shell is cracked, the ladybug said. Give us some light, shouted the old green grasshopper. I can't, wailed the glowworm. They've broken my bulb. Then put in another one, the centipede said. Be quiet a moment, said James. Listen. I do believe they're not hitting us anymore. They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had ceased. The hailstones were no longer smashing against the beach. We've left them behind. The seagulls must have pulled us out of danger. Hooray, let's go up and see. Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. It's all clear, he said. I can't see them anywhere. One by one, the travelers came out again to the top of the peach, and they gazed carefully around. The moon was still shining as brightly as ever, and there were still plenty of huge shimmering cloud mountains on all sides, but there were no cloudmen in sight. The peach is leaking, shouted the old green grasshopper, peering over the side. It's full of holes, and the juice is dripping out everywhere. That does it, cried the earthworm. If the peach is leaking, then we are surely sunk. Don't be stupid, the centipede told him. We're not in the water now. Oh, look, shouted Ladybug. Look, look, look over there. And everyone swung around to look, and in the distance and directly ahead of them, they now saw the most extraordinary sight. It was kind of an arch, a colossal, curvy-shaped thing that reached high into the sky and came down on both ends. And the ends were resting upon a huge, flat cloud that was as big as a desert. Now, what in the world is that? Asked James. It's a bridge. It's an enormous hoop cut in half. It's a giant horseshoe standing upside down. Stop me if I'm wrong, murmured Centipede, going white in the face, but might those not be cloudmen climbing all over it? There was a dreadful silence. The peach floated closer and closer. They are cloudmen. There are hundreds of them, thousands, millions. I don't want to hear about it, shrieked the poor blind earthworm. I'd rather be on the end of a fish hook again than be used as bait than against those terrible creatures again. I'd rather be fried alive and eaten by a Mexican, wailed the old green grasshopper. Please be quiet, whispered James. It is our only hope. They crouched very still upon the peach, staring at the cloud men. The whole surface of the cloud was literally swarming with them, and there were hundreds more up above, climbing about it on that monstrous, crazy arch. But what is that thing? Whispered the ladybug. And what are they doing? I don't care what they're doing, the centipede said, scuttling over to the tunnel entrance. I'm not staying up here. Goodbye. And the rest of them were too frightened or too hypnotized by the whole affair to make a move. Do you know what? James whispered. What? They all cried. What? That enormous arch? They seem to be painting it. They've got pots and big brushes. Look. And he was right. The travelers were close enough now to see exactly what the cloudmen were doing. They had huge brushes in their hands, and they were splashing paint onto the great curvy arch in a frenzy and speed so fast that in a few minutes the whole arc became covered with the most glorious colors, reds, greens, blues, and yellows and purples. It's a rainbow, everyone said at once. They're making a rainbow. Oh, isn't it beautiful? And just look at those colors. Centipede, they shouted, you must come up and see this. They were so enthralled by the beauty and brilliance of the rainbow that they forgot to keep their voices low any longer, and the centipede poked his head up cautiously out of the tunnel. Well, 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 he said, I have always wondered what those things were made of. But why all the ropes? What are they doing with those ropes? Good heavens, they're pushing it off the cloud, cried James. There it goes. And they were lowering it down to earth with ropes. And I'll tell you something else, the centipede said sharply. If I'm not greatly mistaken, we ourselves are going to bump right into it. Bless my soul, he's right, the old green grasshopper exclaimed. The rainbow was now dangling in the air above the cloud. The peach was just below the level of the cloud, and it was hanging directly toward the rainbow, traveling faster. We are lost, Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet again. The end has come. I can't stand it, wailed the earthworm. Tell me what's happening. We're going to miss it, shouted the ladybug. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Yes, yes, no. Oh, my heavens. Hold on, everybody, James called out, and suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the peach went crashing into the top part of the rainbow. This was followed by an artful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and it became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled up with the silk strings that went from the peach to the seagulls, and the peach was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travelers, and James Henry Trotter, glancing up quickly, saw the faces of 1,000 furious cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of a cloud. The faces almost had no shape at all because of the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses or mouths or ears or chins. They only had eyes visible in each face. Two small black eyes glinting malevolently through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing at all. One of the cloudmen, a huge hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least, suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get to one of the silk strings above the peach. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above them, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching for the nearest string, and they saw him grab it and cling to it with his hands and legs, and then very, very slowly, hand over hand, he began coming down the string. Mercy! Help! Save us! Cried the ladybug. He's coming down to eat us, wailed the old green grasshopper. Jump overboard! Then eat the earthworm first, shouted the centipede. It's no good eating me. I'm full of bones like a kipper. Centipede, yelled James. Quickly, bite through that string, the one he's coming down on. And the centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the long string into his hand, his teeth, and he bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above them, a single seagull was seen to come away from the rest of the flock and go flying off with a long string trailing from his neck. And clinging desperately to the side of the string, shouting and cursing with fury, was the huge, hairy cloudman. Up, up, up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky, and James Henry Trotter watched him with delight and said, My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all for one seagull to be able to carry him up like that. He must be all hair and air. The rest of the cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they let go of the ropes they were holding, and then, of course, down went the rainbow, both halves of it together tumbling toward the earth below. This freed the peach, which once again began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travelers were not in the clear yet. The infuriated cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard and horrible objects. Empty paint buckets, paintbrushes, step ladders, stools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, dead rats, bottles of hair oil, anything those brutes could lay their hands on, came raining down upon the peach. One cloudman, taking very careful aim, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud itself, right on to Centipede. The centipede screamed with anger. My legs, he cried. They are all sticking together. I can't walk and my eyelids won't open. I can't see. And my boots are ruined. But the moment everybody was far too busy dodging things that the cloudmen were throwing to pay any attention to the centipede. The paint is drying, he moaned. It's going to get hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything. You can still move your mouth, the earthworm said, and that is a great pity. James, bawled the centipede, please help me wash this paint off. Scrape it off, anything. All right, and we're going to wait until Thursday to find out if they get away from the Cloudman and if they get the centipede cleaned up. So that was 2 more chapters, 27 and 28 of James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. And on Thursday, we are going to start with chapter 29.